Divorcees, Old Dave, aka Old Fart Rants, and Old Face Bloat Sam Seder, need more unemployed voters so they can win on Election Day. This is why Joe Biden has committed treasonous acts against these United States by opening up our southern border so more Sam Seder supporters can be let in so they can suck up dollars from the public treasury, work about as much as Dave, which means not much, and of course vote Democrat. That said, let us look at some data from a few years ago that I recently updated. This data will pertain to continued unemployment claims per 100,000 non-farm jobs. Democrats who have never finished high school, let alone take a statistics class, I adjust this for population, which is why it is calculated per 100,000 non-farm jobs. Let's get down to brass tacks. The entire transcript for this has been posted at Rumble, and I will link to that. Let's start with the states I dubbed the lockdowns: New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, D.C., and Rhode Island. All those jurisdictions had soul-crushing, extended COVID-19 lockdowns, yet their death rates were very high. Those states, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, D.C., Rhode Island, the lockdowns, continued claims per 100,000 non-farm jobs. The two-year average prior to the pandemic lockdowns, that's week ending March 10th, 2018, to week ending March 9th, 2019, and week ending March 16th, 2019, to week ending March 14th, 2020. Keep that in mind. And the pandemic lockdown time frame is week ending March 21st, 2020, to week ending March 20th, 2021. In the two time frames prior to pandemic mania and lockdown, East German lockdowns, those states, continued unemployment claims per 100,000 non-farm jobs, 1,634. That's much higher than the non-lockdowns. And their continued claims per 100,000 non-farm jobs in the pandemic lockdown phase, that's March 21st, 2020 to March 20th, 2021, 9,464. Continued unemployment claims per 100,000 non-farm jobs. That equals a 579.197% increase in the baseline established above. Keep that in mind. Their continued claims per 100,000 non-farm jobs from March 27, 2021 to March 19, 2022, 2,409. That total is 37.11% higher than the U.S. average of 1,757 continued claims per 100,000 non-farm jobs. That is 47.43% higher than the two-year pre-pandemic average for continued claims for those states. And it is 292.86% lower than the pandemic average. So there's a recovery, but it's like having a 5-mile hole and putting a half a mile of dirt in it. So if you hear a Joe Biden supporter saying the economy is doing great, no. Very anemic recovery. If you start at the bottom, the only way to go is up. And the lockdowns cause us to go to bottom. And many states like California and New York were happy to do that to get people who are working in Iowa to pay for their unemployment. Now let's run that same data for the non-lockdowns. That's Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, Utah, Wyoming, Nebraska, and Arkansas, the states that never had a shelter-in-place or stay-at-home order during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns. The two-year average for prior to the pandemic lockdowns, continued unemployment claims per 100,000 non-farm jobs for those states, 722. And during the lockdowns, it went up to 3,637 because you know what rolls downhill. So even if your state didn't engage in lockdown mania, you got hurt. 3,637. That's a 503.74% increase from the baseline established above. There are continued claims, the non-lockdown states, per 100,000 non-farm jobs in the year after the pandemic lockdowns. It went down to 798.7 continued unemployment claims per 100,000 non-farm jobs. That's 120% lower than the U.S. average of 1,757. It is 10.62% higher than the two-year pre-pandemic average for continued unemployment claims per 100,000 non-farm jobs for those states. And it is 355. So they're Iowa, South Dakota, and Utah are very close to being totally recovered. And those numbers are 355.4% lower than the pandemic average. So the recovery is underway in some states. The labor force participation rates overall, not for specific demographics, that data was much better in the non-lockdowns than the lockdowns. Why does Iowa's one of the older states, much higher percentage of the population 65 and older. Yet Iowa has a much higher labor force participation rate than California because California has brought in illegals and a lot of immigration of low quality. We want high quality immigrants. Just like if you were renting your property, you wouldn't rent it to low quality people who aren't going to pay. That's why the Democrats don't want high quality immigration. They don't want Asians with engineering degrees. They want people, they want fragmented families. Right, Stan? Right, Dave? You know all about that. They want people they can sign up for welfare who aren't going to work. And that's why Iowa has a higher labor force participation rate than California, because California has low quality immigrants. Californians of working age, many Californians of working age do not work. Compare the data for California and Texas. I have. Iowans do work. California is a petri dish on what happens when you give Democrats the levers of power for decades. Why are GOP trifectas like Texas and Florida doing so much better than Democrat trifectas in New York and California? You already know the answer to that. The Democrat Party has made it their goal to get as many non-workers into the country, and many of them are already here. The Democrats want as many folks as they can on the public dole so they can promise them some of my money and my boss's money if they vote Democrat. That is why so many Democrat-dominated cities and states have a lot of working-age people taking a few decade vacation from the labor force. That is why so many Democrat-dominated cities have a lot of black fatherless children running wild in the hood. That is why so many Democrat-dominated cities have a lot of black-on-black homicide. That is why so many Democrat-dominated cities have homicide rates several times the national average. Choose wisely when you vote this November. My friends, choose wisely. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.